No one expected a fight that day not in front of Buckingham Palace, not during the quiet morning hours, definitely not between a world-famous martial arts champion and a royal guard, known for never moving an inch. The tourists had come for a peaceful show. Cameras were ready. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. The famous changing of the guard was about to begin, but something was about to happen that would leave everyone frozen, silent and wide, dash-eyed. Ryan Chen, 32, didn't come for the show, he came for attention. He wasn't hard to miss. His flashy white tracksuit, gold chain, and sparkling Rolex stood out in the calm morning light. His name was well known, Ryan Iron Legs Chen, undefeated black belt, MMA fighter, founder of elite dojos in the US, an online star with millions of followers. His slogan, untouchable, stoppable, undisputed, stood close by, wearing jackets with his name and brand. They looked confident, loud, and ready to show off. Oh, but this wasn't a ring. This was royal ground. Ryan's eyes locked onto one of the guards standing still in the traditional red uniform and bearskin hat. He narrowed his eyes and gave a small smirk. "Look at that guy," he said to his crew. "He's just standing there like a statue. No stance, no defense." His teammates chuckled. "Bet he couldn't last 30 seconds with you," one of them added. Ryan nodded. "In my world, standing still is asking to be knocked out." He stepped forward, slowly approaching the guard. Tourists began to notice. A few pulled out phones. Some looked uncomfortable. Others whispered to each other. The guard, William Harrington, didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He simply stood tall, his eyes looking straight ahead, showing no reaction. Ryan waved a hand in front of the guard's face. Nothing. He tilted his head. "You're not going to move, huh?" said. "You guys are trained to ignore everything. Let's see about that." He threw 2 quick punches in the air, stopping just inches from the guard's nose. Still nothing. A few gasps were heard in the crowd. A small boy clung to his mother's arm. An old man lowered his camera and frowned. In the background, someone watched closely. Colonel James Thornton, retired Royal Marine with years of real combat experience, stood among the tourists. He had seen fights before, real ones. You could tell Ryan wasn't just showing off. He wanted trouble. Ryan turned to the crowd, now growing larger. "These guys aren't fighters," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're just actors in funny hats. They couldn't handle 1 round in the cage." Then he did something no one expected. With a quick step, he spun his body and launched a perfect heel kick fast. Sharp, aimed right at the guard's face. The impact echoed. The crowd gasped. The tall bearskin hat flew off the guard's head and landed several feet away. People froze. Cameras shook. A few phones dropped. But the most shocking part wasn't the kick. It was what happened after. The guard didn't fall. His head turned sharply from the hit. Blood ran slowly down the side of his face. But his body didn't move. His posture didn't break. He stood tall, and now his eyes were no longer staring straight ahead. They were locked on Ryan, and they weren't calm anymore. They were cold, focused, dangerous. Ryan took a step back. Okay, that was unexpected. Then the guard moved. Not like a man reacting in pain. Not like someone confused. But like a trained fighter, fast, direct, silent. He dropped his rifle, stepped forward, and before Ryan could raise his hands, grabbed him by the shirt and swept his legs out from under him. Ryan hit the ground hard. The air rushed from his lungs. His eyes went wide. Gasps turned into silence. The courtyard, moments ago filled with chatter, was now dead quiet. Colonel Thornton stepped forward. Ryan struggled to get up, but the guard, still silent, kneeled on his chest and held him down with surprising ease. Every move Ryan made was blocked. Every twist met with a quiet adjustment. It was like fighting stone. "No way," Ryan whispered, breathless. "He's just a guard." "It's not just a guard," the colonel said calmly. "You just picked the wrong man." The world saw Ryan Chen as a champion, but on that day, outside Buckingham Palace, in front of hundreds of people and cameras, he was just another man who didn't know what he was really up against. And what came next? No amount of training could have prepared him for it. People came to Buckingham Palace that morning expecting peace, tradition, and pictures with the famous royal guards. No one came expecting to witness a moment that would leave the whole crowd silent, shocked, and recording with shaking hands. It all began when Ryan Chen stepped onto the palace grounds. Ryan wasn't just a tourist. He was a world-famous martial arts champion, a black belt, who had beaten fighters across the globe. He wore a shining white tracksuit, gold chain, and a diamond-covered watch. His followers on Instagram called him Iron Legs. He called himself untouchable. Ryan didn't come to admire the guards. He came to prove a point. 4 of his teammates followed him, dressed in matching jackets with his name and dojo brand printed on the back. They walked in a circle around him like bodyguards, their faces full of pride and confidence. "See that guard?" Ryan said loudly, pointing toward one of the soldiers standing in front of the palace gates. "He's not ready for a real fight. Look, no stance, no defense. He's just a statue." The guard he pointed at stood tall and still like the rest. His red uniform was spotless. His tall bearskin hat almost touched the edge of the gate. He didn't move, didn't blink. His name was William Harrington, but Ryan didn't know that. Tourists nearby turned to look. Some were confused, some laughed. Nervously. Others began to record, sensing something was about to happen. Ryan stepped closer to the guard, now only a few feet away. He circled him slowly, smirking. In the ring, a guy like this wouldn't last 10 seconds. He waved a hand in front of the guard's face. Nothing. He threw 2 fast punches in the air, stopping inches before the soldier's nose. Still nothing. "This isn't a soldier," Ryan said to the crowd. "He's just a man in a funny hat." Some people gasped. A small child covered his eyes. Even the guards nearby started to glance toward the scene. They were trained not to react too soon. Standing near the edge of the crowd was Colonel James Thornton, a retired Royal Marine with 30 years of real battle experience. His sharp eyes watched every movement. He had seen arrogant men before. He knew something bad was about to happen. Ryan stepped back, turned sideways, then launched a fast-spinning heel kick crack. His foot hit the guard right in the face. The bearskin hat flew through the air and landed several feet away. The crowd screamed, but what happened next was even more shocking. The guard didn't fall. His head turned from the hit, blood slowly running down his cheek, but his body stayed straight, strong, unmoving. Then suddenly, his eyes shifted and locked onto Ryan. They weren't angry eyes. They were focused, cold, sharp. The kind of eyes Ryan had never seen in the ring. Ryan took one small step back. He smiled nervously. "Okay, so you felt that?" The guard dropped his rifle. It hit the ground with a heavy sound in one fast motion. He moved. Ryan had trained for years, fought men in cages, won tournaments in front of screaming fans, but he had never seen movement like this. Before he could lift his arms, the guard grabbed him, swept his legs, and slammed him to the ground. Ryan gasped. He tried to push himself up, but the guard knelt on his chest with perfect control, holding him down without yelling, without panic, without mercy. The crowd stood frozen. Cameras were up. No one spoke. Colonel Thornton finally stepped forward. His voice was calm, but strong. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Ryan lay there, breathless, his ego shattered, looking up at the man he thought was just a guard. He had no idea what was coming next. No one forgot what happened in the palace courtyard. The crowd was still buzzing. Videos were already spreading online. And Ryan Chen, once proud, loud, and undefeated, was now silent. But what came next was something even his strongest fans weren't ready for. Inside a quiet security room at Buckingham Palace, Ryan sat alone on a wooden bench. His team had been taken elsewhere for questioning. He had no phone, no cameras, and no audience. Only silence and his own thoughts. His heart was still beating fast. His shirt was soaked with sweat. His ribs hurt where the guard had pinned him down. But more than the pain in his body, there was pain in his pride. The door opened. Ryan quickly stood up, expecting a guard or a police officer. But what he saw made his eyes widen. It was him, the same man he had kicked in the face just minutes ago. But now, William Harrington wasn't wearing the red uniform or bearskin hat. Now he wore a simple dark military shirt, no smile, no ceremony, just scars on his arms, a healed burn on one hand, and a calm face that didn't need to prove anything. Ryan took a step back. Then slowly he nodded. "You're not just a palace guard," he said quietly. Harrington didn't answer right away. He closed the door behind him, walked to the table, stood across from Ryan. Ryan sat down again, looking smaller now, almost unsure of himself. "I've trained with special forces before," Ryan said. "I've sparred with champions. What you did, that wasn't tournament fighting, that was something else." Harrington nodded once. "We don't train for crowds," he said. "We train for survival." Ryan swallowed hard. "Where did you serve?" he asked. "Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq," Harrington answered. 8 years. I've seen real things, real pain." Ryan looked at the table. "I kicked you," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Hard, but you barely moved. You stood like nothing happened." A long pause filled the room. Then Harrington leaned forward slightly, not in anger, but in truth. "When you've been near explosions," he said, "when you've dragged injured friends out of fire, a kick to the face doesn't scare you." Ain looked up slowly, his eyes full of confusion and regret. The man he thought was a prop in a costume was actually someone who had lived through nightmares he couldn't even imagine. "I misjudged you," Ryan said softly. "I saw a statue. I didn't see the soldier." There was no anger in Harrington's face. No pride either, just honesty. "You saw what you wanted to see," he said. "But the uniform doesn't make a man weak. You should have known better." Ryan nodded slowly. A knock came at the door. Palace security officer stepped in. "Mr. Chen, we've contacted legal services. You'll need to answer questions about your actions today." Ryan stood up. For the first time, he looked respectful. Before leaving, he turned to Harrington and asked one last question. "Why didn't you hit me back harder? You could have broken my arm, knocked me out. Why stop?" Harrington gave a small, quiet answer. "Because I knew you were already broken." That single sentence hit Ryan harder than any punch ever had, as he was taken out of the room. Past more guards and cameras and whispers, he wasn't the same man who arrived that morning. He was someone who had been humbled not by power, but by discipline. Not by pain, but by truth. Nobody could stop talking about it. The video of Ryan Chen's spinning kick had gone viral in less than an hour. Millions of people saw the moment his foot hit the royal guard's face. But what shocked them even more wasn't the kick, it was what happened next. The guard didn't fall. He didn't even blink. Instead, he moved like a warrior from a battlefield and dropped the undefeated champion in seconds. By the end of the day, Ryan was trending worldwide for all the wrong reasons. Comments exploded online. He kicked a royal guard. He deserved what he got. Respect to the soldier for staying calm. People didn't just see a fight, they saw a lesson. A real-life moment that shook even the most confident viewers. Meanwhile, Ryan sat quietly in a private hotel room near the palace. He had been released under watch, but the weight of what had happened wasn't going away. Not with silence. Not even with sleep. He stared at his phone. Notifications were still pouring in interview requests. Angry fans, loyal supporters, critics, memes, jokes. Videos slowed down frame by frame, but none of it made him feel better. Not even close. His face still hurt. His pride hurt more. But what hurt the most was something he couldn't post about. He had been wrong. He had judged a man by his stillness. He thought standing calm meant weak, thought a red uniform meant harmless. But William Harrington wasn't weakened. He wasn't harmless. He had been through real wars, real fear, and real life and death moments. Ryan opened the video again. He watched himself smirking. He watched the kick land. He watched the guard's head turn, and then he watched the moment everything changed. The switch in the guard's eyes. The takedown, the calm hold, the moment where Ryan couldn't move even an inch. He paused the video there in that frame. He didn't look like a champion. He looked like a student who had finally been taught the truth. A few hours later, Ryan returned to the palace not to fight, not to brag, but to apologize. Security met him at the gate, unsure if they should let him in. But a message came through the radio. Permission granted. Inside, Harrington stood waiting, not in red, but in his black military training uniform. Ryan walked slowly. Steps had none of the swagger they once had. He stopped in front of Harrington. For a second, he said nothing. Then, with deep breath, he finally spoke. "I was wrong," he said. "I disrespected something I didn't understand." Harrington looked at him, quiet, still calm. Ryan continued, voice low. "I thought I was showing strength, but I was showing weakness. Real strength is what you showed. You stayed calm. You protected your post. You didn't lose control even when you could have hurt me badly." Harrington nodded. Ryan stepped back. "One more thing," Ryan added. "If you ever leave the guards, I'd be honored to learn from you. Not how to fight, but how to carry myself." That was the moment. The real lesson hit home. It wasn't about fists. It wasn't about speed. It wasn't even about winning. It was about discipline, respect, knowing when not to strike. As Ryan left the palace for the last time, the same crowd that once laughed or watched in shock now looked at him differently. He came in as a fighter. He walked away as a man who had finally been taught what true strength looked like, and somewhere deep down, knew this moment would stay with him forever.